So, welcome everybody. This is the first in a series of webinars that we're calling Talking DFM, PCB designers and fabricators talking together. And a lot of good things can happen from these two entities talking together and engaging early from a reliability standpoint, from a quality standpoint. And it's something that doesn't happen all that much in the industry. So we're trying to promote kind of the magic that can happen if we can actually talk to each other. So today we've got our experts, our Dave Lackey at American Standard. He's the VP of Business Development. We've got Jitendra. Help me again, Jitendra.
Jitendra Basania.
Basania, thank you very much. I wrote it down and I still messed it up. And he runs engineering at American Standard. And from Freedom CAD, we've got Rich Cleaver. Rich, what's your title?
Director of Design Services.
Great. Okay. Since this is the very first one, why don't we just let the audience know who you guys are and what you do? So Rich, let's start with you. What do you do there and how long you've been there? And just tell us all about you.
All right. So I'm Rich Cleaver. So I've been at Freedom CAD for 13 years. My experience before that, I was with IBM and with Selectron. So I have a background mostly in assembly engineering.
Okay.
What I currently do is manage our Valor QA group, where we do reviews of all the designs that Freedom CAD does, which is upwards of 400 to 500 a year, and do quality checks and create the final development packages, design packages that go out to their suppliers.
Outstanding. How long have you been doing this?
I've been at Freedom CAD for 13 years.
All right. And in design overall?
35 years overall. So.
All right. All right. Dave, how about you?
I'm the VP of Business Development here at American Standard Circuits. I've been with the organization here about 13 years. I got just over 40 years experience in PCBs, varying responsibilities. Right now, I mainly focus on sales and technical sales. Go out and visit with the customers and some of our sales reps or other salespeople to bring some technical information to opportunities out there for new business.
Sure. And full disclosure, Dave and I used to work together like in another lifetime, a long time ago. We're talking about that 40-year time frame. Yeah, you and I are both kind of in the same boat. I think everybody but Jitendra has been in this business like decades and decades and decades. So moving on to Jitendra, tell us a little bit about you.
So this is Jitendra Basania. I'm engineering manager at American Standard Circuit. I have been doing this since last 15 years, but I got this role since last 4 years. I started my career as a CAM engineer, so I have used the ODB++ and the data package, but our tooling software is GenFlex. It was first Genesis, now it's turned out to be the GenFlex. So I'm responsible for front and tooling. So we do DFM, DRC, all the data and the planning. So I have seen a very simple double-sided board to the very complex in the technology wise. So we have a variety of experience, and we have very energetic engineering team at ASC. 6 engineers at ASC who is doing all this work.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. So we're talking today, the topic is the importance of a good data package. And of course, either the designer or the OEM will send the fabricator a design package. And that's the model that y'all use to build the product, correct?
That's correct.
That's right. So our friend and colleague, Happy Holden, famously told me one time that he estimated about only 10% of the data packages that PCB fabricators get are good to go out of the gate. What do you guys think about that, Dave and Jitendra? Do you see that, or is it better, or is it worse than that?
Yeah, my experience has been that's probably fairly accurate. For one reason or another, there's something either missing that wasn't supplied, or there's conflicting information between the data and the drawing, or just basically find problems with the data in itself when you're doing a design rule check. I'll let Jitendra talk a little bit more about some of the things he sees.
Right. So most commonly, I mean, the starting point is the
Gerber data and the net list. So first job is to compare the net list with the Gerber data. So out of 10 job, I can say mostly the 5 to 6 job have a net list problem. I mean, it's not matching with the Gerber data. So, I mean, as soon as we see the problem, we have to stop the job and, we have to gather all the details and notify the customer. So that adds one delay. I mean, it will stop, it will hold there. So that's the one common problem I see from the beginning. Most of the time, what happened at designer end, they forgot to, tune up that editing with the net list. So it can be the common ground, shorts, but that is valid, but its net list is not updated. So that's the most of the cause, and they even said, okay, now go ahead with the Gerber data, and you can extract the net list from the Gerber data.
Okay.
So we can easily, avoid that. If customer, designer, pay more attention on that point.
More times than not, the designer will just say, build the net list from the data supplied versus trying to resolve the conflict in the provided net list and the data itself.
How does that sync up to things you hear from customers, Rich?
Well, I was going to say this. I'm happy to say I've never gotten that call.
Wow.
We don't.
Well,
That's part of the way our process is set up by having somebody like me and my team as a third party back end as opposed to the designer doing the outputs. Is we actually verify a lot of the outputs or create those checked outputs before we send out data packages. And the other thing that with the way that we do it, I think is good, is that we design in Allegro and in Expedition, Mentor Expedition, Mentor Pads, and in Altium. And by the process that we use with everything funneling through my group and everything funneling through Valor, all of our data packages effectively are all alike, regardless of what tool they were designed to. Obviously, there are some CAD tool outputs that are unique, but like all of our Gerber data looks the same. It does, and all our ODBs look the same. It doesn't matter what tool they come from. So
excellent.
But yeah, so my point, our job is to prevent ever hearing that kind of feedback.
Outstanding. And I want to make clear that what we're talking about is absolutely no reflection on FreedomCAD. We chose FreedomCAD because you guys are one of the best in the business. So things that we're talking about don't necessarily come from you guys, but you're not doing business with everybody in the industry, and there's design centers and OEMs out there all over the place.
Right.
Well, good. So what about things like, do you see, Dave and Jitendra, a problem with, things getting identified like copper weights and impedance values or stack ups or anything like that? Is that a common issue?
It's fairly common. Where this is where you would have a conflict in perhaps maybe the fab drawing and a stack up that's provided separately sometimes, or where you have controlled impedance and they give you a stack up to follow. We will simulate that with our model, and more times than not, we'll find we may have to tweak it a little bit, of course, get approval just to make sure we hit their impedance. So, and sometimes it's not as far as the problem is not just getting a complete data package, but there can also be problems within the way the data was output that cause a lot of delays from a CAM standpoint. And Jitendra, if you want to.
All right. Sometimes we get the stack up with the data, but there is no information about impedance. When we look into the real Gerber data, topside signal layers, we see those differential pairs are routed, but I don't find anywhere the information. So that's called the conflicting stuff. I got the control stack up, but there is no impedance information. For us, we do simulate based on the information provided, and we can tweak a little bit, as Dave said, the dielectric thickness and all that, and we have to make that TDR to test those impedance values.
Okay, that's really interesting. Rich, is that part what Jitendra just highlighted? Are those part of your process to make sure that we catch those before they go out?
Yes, our drawing template has an impedance table, or ones our customers has it, or maybe sometimes they're buried in notes, sometimes they're in a table. Sometimes we do include a preliminary stack up, but usually when we do that, we still have a reference on the drawing as to what impedance values we want to see. So, and that's one of the things that we look for, is that one, that those impedance values are there, and two, that what's in the data matches up, right? If we don't want to have an impedance table that says look for 4.5 mil traces, and the data actually has 4.2, right? So we make sure that those go in sync so that we don't get that question later.
That is another
Right.
common problem where they'll have an impedance line listed in the data or on the fab drawing, but it doesn't exist in the data.
Right.
And you're searching for that, and you have to, all of these things cause
Right.
delay, obviously.
Right. We try to at least eliminate those from the table, or sometimes there's just a disclaimer that says, if you don't see the traces, then you can ignore those. But I'd
Correct.
rather it be clean.
So one of the common problem for impedance, let's say 4.5 mil line or for layer 2 impedance control lines. But when I try to select 4-point line, there are a bunch of other lines also drawn with the same aperture. So if I have to make some adjustment from 4.5 to 4.25, that becomes nightmare for CAM engineer.
I agree.
So I have given my feedback to so many other designers. Whenever you try to add those impedance models, try to make that unique line with. Do
Right.
not mix up with other lines. So if
Right.
that is possible. So
We do that a lot, where if I see fours used for multiple purposes, it's take like the single-ended lines and just change them to 4.01 or something like that, just so they're unique.
right.
Okay.
That's always helpful, yeah.
When you guys do find a problem, do you always go back to the design owner, or do you, some things you just try to fix on your own?
Yeah, some modifications are acceptable, but when you start messing with the design in general, you've got to go back to the customer and explain the issue. Either they send you a new data package, or you make the edits and get it approved. But anything that's going to affect the design itself, other than things that we do for manufacturing, you're going to get some feedback on what we see and what we think we need to do.
I would imagine you see a difference in the quality of the data packages from different design owners. Like some are better than others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Some of the more difficult issues when you are dealing with particularly a contract manufacturer, it's not their design.
Right.
And then there's a lot of back and forth, and then they got to go back to their customer. And so that's one of the bigger challenges. But depending on who the customer is, we have customers that give us very clean, great data. We have customers that give us data that we can work with, but the way they output it makes for a lot of editing in the CAM side, and it just slows the whole front end process down.
Is that what Jitendra was talking about earlier with the aperture with different line widths or other issues like that?
It's one of them, and maybe some of the other.
Like other what if I describe, let's say power ground layer, they're drawn with 1 mil aperture. So it makes the data super duper big size, and is whenever we run some cleanup or DFM, it takes a long time, and so it makes it hard to edit. Difficult to edit that camera.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what are the consequences of that 90% that Happy Holden's talking about. What's the consequences? Obviously, you can't finish the job, but it impacts a whole bunch of different things when the data package is not right. Is that correct?
Correct. You're going to have, obviously, it's the delay. That's a problem. And getting that information back to the customer, having to wait for an answer, then the job gets put on the side. And of course, clear communication with a clear understanding between the designer and the fab house that here's what we're seeing and how do we address it, and make sure everything was done properly and signed off. So you don't want to find an issue and then fix it the wrong way, or cause another problem down the road.
Sure, and if your engineering team, say we get something where it's ambiguous or it's not not clear to define and your team doesn't catch it, then we've got some issues with the product, right?
Correct. I mean, even if it's built into the data, and there's a problem, and it may not be that obvious, but that's where a very good design rule scan of the data helps out and finds potential issues. If you go just based on design, if you have a bad design coming in, you're going to have a bad product going out.
Right.
So you try to catch as much as you can for your customer or for the designer, should there be a problem.
If I can add to that a little bit, something that we see occasionally is we get requests from some of our customers to do a respin on a design just for functional changes or part obsolescence changes or something like that. So they are a different design house did the original one and we're doing the cleanup, and I go through my check and I find what I consider to be pretty serious issues. And sometimes the feedback we get is, well, it's not, we're not going to fix that. It's not a problem. We built it like that before. And I think the real answer is, no, you didn't build that. What you built was what guys like you fixed or edited or manipulated to make it work. And now the problem is now we're going to send this data to somebody else and they're going to fix it differently. And you don't have the same product, which I think is the key to, it's important that you do it properly so that anything down the road is still done the same way.
That's a great point, Rich. And I know, Dave, you guys get that all the time when you get work transferred in and you start asking a bunch of technical questions. Customer says, well, the last guy didn't ask us about that, right?
Yeah, we hear that all the time.
Yeah,
I'm talking about things that's fundamental.
Didn't tell anybody, right?
Yeah. I'm talking about things that's fundamental. It's like this hole doesn't have a solder mask opening. I mean, there's no way you built it that way, right?
Exactly.
Exactly.
So, Rich, you mentioned earlier that you don't get a lot of those calls for. Do you get any calls from customers?
Yeah, we get some. A lot of times it may be a note interpretation, or we'll miss a dimension occasionally and things like that. But any real hard design things like net lists or hole sizes or hole counts or we don't get shorts and things like that. So our idea is that we know we're not going to be 100% in line with every fab shop out there, but if we can at least design to an industry standard or a standard that's required for the degree of technology used in the product we're designing, what's left are just the preferences or some of the unique questions like adding thieving or maybe increasing a little spacing somewhere or something like that, but nothing or stack up questions, but nothing functional.
Does FreedomCAD do any kind of training or customer education or road trips to educate them on understanding what's needed, what's not needed, and what's important?
It's pretty much an ongoing thing between our designers and their customers, where they'll take my feedback and explain to the customer what needs to be changed or what has to be changed. So, a lot of our customers look to us to be the experts on that too. They don't want to understand all that stuff, as long as what we send them is what's frustrating are the customers that refuse to make these changes. And they kind of live in the world of unfortunately, they'll say dumping all those responsibilities on their fab shop to clean up. Right. My take is that's our responsibility and we should take care of that. So. Right.
Dave, you guys promote early engagement with your design services, whether it's a customer or a design shop. That's critical, isn't it? Not just for the data package, but just in general, talking to the people that make the decisions at the design stage to make sure that you avoid some of these issues.
Yes, that's correct. You don't want to get in something that was designed that is not manufacturable. Sometimes, regardless of who the fabricator even is, you get a bunch of no bits back if the data was looked at, or find the problem down the road after the order's been taken.
So, let's say one good example about bed drilling. So when we do the bed drilling, I mean, if you leave the only 2 mil dielectric for the do not cut layer, so aesthetically it's impossible with the mechanical drilling. So we need like tolerance plus or minus 5 mil, and to begin with, dielectric thickness is only 2.5 mil. So there is no way it can be, make with that call out. So we recommend that time, like we propose our stake ups, like what should be the stake ups, good stake up for this. It's gonna meet impedance as well and the back drilling requirement as well. So for ASC, before even we quoting the job, we have a technical assessment to, one sales engineer is just assigned for that role. So what he does, he just, import the data, go through the basic DFM DRC, going through all the fabrication drawing notes. Is there any special requirements call out? Can we meet it? If we cannot meet it, what we can propose to meet this requirement? And once our technical assessment done, then we finish our coding. So that's an standard practice at ASC.
Okay, very
Yeah,
good.
From the quote perspective, I mean, it'd be great to find all the data issues at the quote, but obviously that's not what they're trained to do. So they're basically looking at the data file very quickly, and of course any prints, so they can get the numbers, for the quote. But when it's a complex issue or a complex design, I should say, sometimes they'll go through that upfront assessment to look for any problems. So at the quote stage, you could say, hey, we were missing this layer or a drill file or some information from the drawing, and get it resolved right there.
Okay, sometimes that's part of the deal, right? You don't want to put too much time into it if you haven't actually got a job yet, but you always want to make sure you accurately quote it. And it all depends on that preview, right? Your customer service people aren't really engineers, and you've got software that does a check to look for potential problems, but sometimes it takes somebody like Jitendra actually looking at the data and going through it to really understand it.
Right. When you start digging deeper into tooling the job itself, that's when the CAM engineers will pick all this stuff up.
Okay. Rich, you mentioned earlier that you know, regardless of the customer, your output is the same for everyone?
Regardless of the tool.
Of the tool,
the design tool. Yeah, so as far as what our customers get, some require more or less data than others, and then we have a standard that we use for those that don't have a preference. So our general package and what most people get is we start everything with ODB++ file. We output an ODB++ out of the design data, pull that into Valor, do some cleanup to make it more orderly and complete, run checks on that, and then if it's necessary, then we generate all the Gerber data and the drill files and things out of Valor. So that's where everything's the same, because it's translated from the design tool format to the ODB format. So I'd be interested from Dave is how much, whether you guys get a lot of Gerber data or whether you're able to work with ODB. I think we provide way too much Gerber data. I think ODB++ data should be the standard, and everybody should be able to work with that.
Yeah, that's our preferred.
Yeah,
that's our preferred input.
We provide that, and we include a README file on all our packages, and there's if you want to call it a disclaimer in there that says that here's all this data. It's multiple formats of the same thing, right? The Gerber data and the ODB are represent the same data, and then just from a drawing standpoint, we typically provide a Gerber output of a drawing, a PDF of that drawing, and then some CAD files like GenCAD or FabMaster or things like that. And from an assembly standpoint, an XY file. We do create an IPC file for you if you want to use the Gerber data. But so usually various formats. We do have some customers, military especially, that require DXF files for drawings. We have some customers that we actually have to create a PDF of every Gerber layer. I think that's just because they're not very good at using a Gerber viewer.
Oh my gosh.
But in general, yeah, it's all various formats of the same thing. So
right, we see that it's the same thing. Depending on who the customer is, a wide variety of ways they supply the data, and one of the problems we'll have on occasion is they don't have any drawing at all, and we have to then in our engineering department we have to create a drawing that shows the part size, a hole to edge, some information. So when this job gets built or gets in the final inspection, they have to compare. Well, I have the board here, but if you didn't have any drawing, they don't know what they're inspecting to, even what class level,
Hmm.
what color is the mask supposed to be, how big is the board, things like that. So on occasion, engineering has to create a drawing so it can be used in the fabrication in the rest of the shop.
Interesting. Rich, when you get a new customer you haven't dealt with before, how do you get to the point where you understand what they need?
Our preference is to say, here's our standard. Is this okay?
Okay, all right. So
if
you
they
guys
want to do something different, that's fine, but then they need to define all of that.
All right,
We want to push everybody to the standard minimum. That's the easiest and quickest for us to do, and we, have plenty of experience in using that.
Perfect. So that's whatever you're doing, it's working. If you're not getting any customer complaint calls, or you're not getting incomplete data package calls, you guys are doing a fantastic job. It's got to be in your culture and how you got your process set up and your checks and balances. So great job. We need more guys like you out there.
Yeah, that would make our job easier.
Of course.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts, Dave and Jitendra or Rich?
Yeah, I mean, if we receive the complete data package to begin with, that will be the beneficial for everyone, with the customer, with the fabricator, so we don't lose more time and we can move on with in the strict timeline.
Yeah, and if you could provide, even if right up front, particularly with somebody new, to let them know, here's what we would expect in your data, that we're going to need as a minimum to make sure that we can go ahead and produce this without a lot of back and forth and delays. And like I said earlier, one of the more difficult issues for a PCB fabricator is when we're dealing with like a contract manufacturer. They're not the designers, and then there's a lot of back and forth, and sometimes they don't particularly want to go back to their customer and have to say, hey, we have a problem with the board design or missing information, and that just causes more delays and more time.
Sure. And that I was in that business, after PCBs assembly. Rich has been in that business. So, from the contract manufacturer standpoint, nothing could be worse than going back to the customer with a bunch of technical questions and they answer them eventually. And then 2 weeks later, you come back with some more, right? So they want you to get it all done in the beginning, get all the questions up front, and not have to come back twice.
Right. And we definitely would prefer to do that. Sometimes you can't. You got to resolve one problem to get further down the road to find the next one. But if you can get it all at once, that's great. Yeah.
What we do with occasionally our customers that are on a tight schedule, and they'll want to skip what we do at the end of our process because this has to get to fab today. And to try to convince them that if you give me one more day, I might save you a week of back and forth with your fab shop. And in the end, you'll be ahead of the game. Right.
Excellent. Well, I think this has been a great discussion, guys. I appreciate your time. Once again, this is Steve Williams with the Right Approach Consulting, and we're with American Standard Circuits and Freedom CAD, and look forward to more episodes on different topics. And you can find out how you can improve your process and your product by engaging with your design service or your OEM customer early and often. So everybody, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. And until next time.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks for watching.